Oh, right.
Good evening, everyone. Very excited to welcome you again to another online session. And we are having the second session on brain plasticity. And this is really a fascinating topic for me because I am a language teacher. I want to know about how this very extraordinary little, shall we call it muscle, is full of wonders and magic. So tonight's session we will talk about more details, and we will discuss the topic from different angles, hopefully. And you can use the chat box to ask questions, to make comments, and Dr. Jennifer will respond to the questions, and also to the comments. So before we get started, I just want to remind the audience that the main objective of Everyone Academy is to connect educators together and also to exchange experiences and learn from people all over the world. So welcome, Dr. Jennifer.
Hi, Aziz.
I am, as I said, I'm very glad to welcome you again for the second session. We did a session on this topic some weeks ago. So I will let Jennifer do a little introduction, and then we will share the presentation and talk about this topic. You can go ahead, Jennifer. And,
oh, right. Okay. When we spoke before, Aziz, I thought I had finished my book, but I've then had 6 months correcting it and proofreading it because it has so many references in it. It has a huge amount of references, which you can see if you go to the publisher's website. They let you download all the references, I think, if I'm right. Anyway, this is the book. And so obviously I'm highly delighted. It was published on the 10th of November. And I have tried to pick out some interesting points to give a taster of what it's about, although it has got an enormous amount of stuff in it, which I researched over the last 4 years.
That's great. So in the previous session, or in the previous talk, we discussed things, generally. We defined brain plasticity, and also we talked about the neurons and how the brain functions, etc. So I just want to say that this topic is extremely important for me personally, because 20 years ago, I was not able to speak English, but now I am able to speak it because of brain plasticity.
Yes.
Yeah, because if the brain is not, rewiring or restructuring itself, we will not progress. We'll be, will remain in the same place because of this amazing. I don't know how to call it. This amazing function in the brain to rewire itself. We learn new languages, we learn new activities, we learn even if we are old, the learning never stops because of this.
That's right.
Yes. So let's get
So this is going to be based upon chapter 1 of my book, which is basically an introduction to the whole subject.
Yes. What's again the title of the first chapter?
Oh, now you're asking me. It's on my slides.
Yes.
Let's go to the slideshow because it's there.
Yes, sure. Yes. You are able now to share the.
Okay. Right. Where am I? Okay, that's it. Right.
Yes. You can go to the first one slide.
That's it.
Good.
Right. Let's just move that aside. Yes. Okay. The first chapter comes up in a minute. I just wanted, my bit of introductory blurb says, let's explore education and psychology to open our minds to the benefits and possibilities of understanding how brain plasticity affects our lives. So it's not just about learning. I'll just move us down there and go to the next one. Right, this is the introduction. This chapter is about the discovery and implications of neuroplasticity. My book invites you to discover ways brain plasticity, feelings and emotions influence human learning, and to find out whether such research can inform our personal teaching practices. The method of research I use is a mixed method phenomenological one, explained in my first book. And I think I explained it quite well in my first interview with you, 𝐬𝐧𝐬𝐽, so I don't think we need to go into that. So we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of historic background. So the term neuroplasticity is derived from neuron, a nerve cell, and plasticity meaning malleable, modifiable, changeable, adaptable, alterable, fluid, flexible, moldable, or impressionable. So, but my favorite one is adaptable, because I think we are very adaptable, as far as I can make out. The brain has been examined through history. For example, according to Matthew Cobb, who wrote a marvelous book in 2020, he said it was investigated by two Greek anatomists, Herophilus and Erasistratus, sorry, not very good at Latin, living in Alexandria, not long after Aristotle was there. So a long time ago, I suppose 2000 years. They dissected the brain and the nervous system. Herophilus described the cortex, cerebellum, spinal cord, nervous system, motor and optic nerves. And you can see Matthew Cobb's book referenced at the bottom. Neural plasticity is demonstrated in real time through neural imaging. And this is just a brief video explaining that. Right, now that's interesting because it was used to spot strokes and help people with blood clots, presumably tumors in the brain, that sort of thing, physical. But Professor Ramachandran doesn't use these, although I'm sure he has. He's a neuroscientist. He doesn't use those methods a lot of the time, and he has found out a lot about the plastic brain by using his therapy methods with patients and asking them about things. And this is not very distinct, but he's about to explain how phantom limbs, which people experience pain in after they've had their limbs taken away, can continue to give them pain. And he has found a way with mirrors to give them the illusion that the limb which they have still got is the one that's missing, and it helps them their brain to readjust so that they realize that their limb is missing somehow. And he's got several films on this. This is just a short description by him.
He's the one with the hand moving, right? On the right.
On the right, yes. Yes, Professor Ramachandran is a really top scientist, and I'm sure he does use the other methods, but he's done amazing things just working with patients and having all sorts of clever ideas about how to help them. Right, 1.3 in my chapter is firing and wiring with neuroplasticity. Points list, hang on, I'll move this down a bit. With a points list at the end, which I think useful things to help us with teaching. Donald Hebb is credited with being the first to describe the ability of neurons to connect by firing and wiring. Hebb's theory was that the changes in neuronal structures are caused by responding to experience. Right. So in 1973, Norwegian physiologist 𝐩𝐥𝐬𝐿𝐼 and neuroscientist Timothy Bliss discovered that when synaptic cells were given an extra high frequency electrical stimulus, they developed a long-term enhancement response. The cells later responded again and again, even when stimulated at a lower level with an electric current. This is not now known as long-term potentiation, or LTP, and is perhaps the basis of human memory. So a very strong current, you could then stimulate the same cells with less of a current, but they still responded in the same way. It was eventually proved that plasticity was indisputable in childhood, but traditional scientists were still reluctant to accept that it is a continuous throughout life. This makes me wonder if we may suppose and prove that situations creating effects of strong sensory stimulus can create a stronger electrical buzz that may aid memory. In fact, we know that, I think, from our experience of teaching. For example, school trips, outdoor pursuits, drama, music, cooking smells, and wanting to eat, music, sound. You could include all sorts of other things in that. Right. So now we have the points list, neuroplastic pointers for learning and teaching research. Neurons tend to connect to one another when activated at the same moment. Seems obvious, but we don't often think about these sort of things. Neurons that fire together wire together, which we've often heard, was a phrase created by Carla Schatz. Neural maps change their borders, become greater and less detailed, move around the brain, and can even disappear. Brain maps organize themselves in groups that relate to sequences of actions that frequently happen. Those neural maps that do not fire at the same time, tend to be further away from each other. Neurons that fire apart, wire apart. In starting to learn, we use superfluous bodily movements, that reduce as neural maps are embedded by practice. We stop using irrelevant muscles and fine-tune our bodies more efficiently using fewer neural maps. The brain makes learning adaptations when a person is motivated to learn, so as you were, as is when you learned English. The speed at which we think is itself plastic and variable, around between 2 and 200 miles an hour. I'm going to miss the next slide, which is more of a list because of time. Okay, 1.4. Neurodiversity includes neurodivergence and disability. Traditional cognitive scientists researched the brain by comparing normally functioning people to those they thought had a mental health difficulty, physical disability. They tended not to investigate particularly healthy or particularly intelligent and/or disabled individuals who develop skills in a different way. Story research evidence often goes against this conclusion. So Ramachandran, working with individual patients, he says that it's the unusual cases which tell us most about everybody's brains in many ways, because they point up a particular feature of most people's brains and give us more information. This traditional attitude of regarding people as if they were not normal has meant within the field of disability medicine, breakthroughs and progress have often been achieved with insight and persistence in the face of disencouragement and ignorance of closed-minded experts who have stuck with their training and not been open-minded and researched as they worked. Lots of others have, of course, but some people get very stuck in a fixed mindset. For example, it is possible for individuals to demonstrate exceptional human abilities in areas in combination with a variety and degree of disability. We see that in the Olympics. Like the famous English theoretical physicist and cosmologist Stephen Hawking, who wrote a book called The Brief History of Time, which is groundbreaking theory he came up with, even though he was extremely ill.
So here, disability has something to do with the brain. Even if for example, if the brain gets damaged in certain areas, there is some sort of compensation elsewhere in the brain.
Not only that, the brain can rearrange itself in a different way, apparently. So
I am talking about this the disability. I am commenting on this disability.
Yes, I think it's just that there are so many complicated different ways in which individual brains, they are similar and they're different. So this requires a great deal of research, obviously, and we can do our own research, in fact, into ourselves. But if we don't realize that our brain can adjust and adapt, we tend not to. We don't think we can do something, then we won't attempt it. So this is very useful information, in my opinion. So shall I go on to the next slide?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're saying is there are different terms now. We talk about neurodiversity, which is everybody, but some people who have particular ways of being sometimes refer to themselves as neurodivergent. And then disability, maybe, as you were talking about, a particular problem. So all of these things come into play and require consideration. Neuroplasticity appears to consist of multiple natural, biological, electrochemical processes we still do not fully comprehend. Human perceptions, free will, and agency are fundamental to its operation. So somebody who is disabled but wants to do something, their brain will try to accommodate what they want to do. And I think many of us don't realize that. We may still not be able to do it, but at least we know there is a possibility that we may be able to learn to do the things we want to do, instead of feeling that we can't. We're not fixed. 𝐚𝐬𝐧 theorized that people with learning difficulties, psychological problems, disabilities, stroke, or brain damage might be helped. And he eventually went on to prove this through his work with patients, very much involving listening to people and working with them and trying things out and getting feedback from them as to what's working. And of course, that applies to when we're teaching as well. So I think we could learn that lesson from him and from Ramachandran. Knowledge about brain plasticity has accumulated through the work of neurotherapists and clinical psychologists like Ramachandran. So, such research and discovery is the kind of ongoing work carried out by Barbara Arrowsmith-Young. She wrote a wonderful book in 2012 giving her life story. She had multiple learning difficulties in her early childhood because I think she suffered a stroke in the womb, but I'm not absolutely certain. I think that's right. She managed to solve her own problem. She found a way to solve her problem, which I tell her story a bit in the book, but her own book also explains what happened to her. She started in 1978, and today her school program, she runs a school in Canada, is implemented in over 90 educational organizations in 12 countries.
The video is talking about her story, right?
Sorry? Oh,
The
gone
video
back.
is talking about her story.
It's talking about the man she got the idea from. I'll have to start again. Hang on.
Okay.
Right.
It's
No worries. It's talking about Luria, where he was the person who was a Russian who worked on soldiers who were injured in the Second World War. And Luria, and he told their stories, and one particular soldier described her symptoms. She was disorientated. She got lost when she went outside the house. She had a terrific memory, but she had problems with reading, and she learned to mask that. Her school just told her that she had to get around it, so she learned everything. She had to read her academic papers 20 times before she could write, or books, and she learnt them off by heart. But she tells you about that in her book. But this starts off with Luria, which we can skip past because we've just heard that bit a little bit. Right. Just stop there a minute. Sorry, you've got this at the bottom. So her program targets 19 specific areas of dysfunctions, such as dyslexia, auditory memory, and spatial awareness, with exercises designed to strengthen key areas of the brain. It takes about 6 months for children to learn Braille, and they stumble quite a lot in that 6 months. But then if they have a gap, I believe, of a month, they can come back and still be able to do it, because that period, it's like riding a bicycle. Once you have learnt something, and you repeat it often enough, it becomes an embedded skill in your brain.
The sound is low. But the idea is talking about program. She started.
Right. I think I haven't got time for any more of that, but you get the idea.
Yes.
Okay. Are we okay, Aziz?
Yes, we just want to hear the sound, but it's a little bit low. Okay.
Right. So I just wanted to show you Joseph Critchlow's accepting an award for his essay. He has problems. He's got sight difficulties, and he goes to a special school in Liverpool, which is not very far from me. And so I'll just pray that.
Okay, this one is good.
He's a UK comedian. He was.
So do you know this person like close? Is close to you, right?
I haven't met him, but I've been in touch with his headmaster. This is his quite short essay, which I have in my book as data.
Together in things like music and sports, as better ways to share the opposite. From there, we can work together in creating a safer, better world.
So you can see I'm saying, you know, he's disabled but extremely intelligent and has written a beautiful philosophical piece of writing, which has won a World Prize. So I thought he was a very good piece of data, his story. And his mother gave me permission to put that in my book, in amongst my references. Did you want me to look at the chat, Aziz? Is that why it has appeared at the top?
No.
Oh, okay. Could you take that bar away? Because I can't read it. It's over my writing.
Which one?
I have a bar at the top. How do I get rid of it? It's not letting me cross it out.
I can't see a bar.
You can't see it, right? It's obscuring what I've written, but never mind. What
No?
you read the top bit because I can't read it.
So it's
we're doing
discovery and are you talking about the title?
Just read read the title and then read the first part, the first point, please, because I've got a bar across there that suddenly appeared from nowhere.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so the discovery and the implications of neuroplasticity, consciousness, memory, and regeneration in sleep. So that's the title. So human consciousness is a subject of speculation for psychologists, educationalists, and philosophers. The evidence is subject from different perspectives through different lenses using observation, qualitative, mixed method research, and analysis. So neuroscientists are contributing to interaction with and gaining from this research.
Right, I'll carry on. Thank you very much. Your English is amazing if you've only been learning it for 2 years. Matthew Cobb includes this Matthew Cobb, who wrote the history of the brain, or what we know about the brain so far, includes Charles Darwin, is 1809 to 1882, shows you some of the people who have talked about consciousness and awareness of the brain. 𝐠𝐚𝐲𝐽, I'm not sure if my pronunciation is right, as is, Santiago Ramon y Cajal, and Francis Crick, who of course was the one of the discoveries of DNA, who died in 2004. In Matthew Cobb's History of the Brain, which is 2000, I'm not sure why I've got 2002 there. I think that should be 2020. He thinks it will be another 50 years before the human brain is fully mapped. And this is an interesting point, the next one. He puts the pure science into context, explaining that in 2020, the maggot brain was mapped up to 70% of its 10,000 neurons by Croatian neuroscientist Marta Zlatic's team at Cambridge University. They had found it has 1.36 million synapses and 2 meters of neurons, all of which can be contained within the size of a full stop.
So, Jennifer, what does he mean by this fully mapped? Does he mean that there are certain areas in the brain that we need discovery, or what that we don't know about?
It means that they are actually mapping a maggot's brain with this team at Cambridge University. And so far, they've only mapped 70% of its 10,000 neurons.
Wow.
And they think that when they've done it, they'll have found 1.36 million synapses and 2 meters of neurons, all of which can be contained within the size of a full stop. So a full stop on the page is the size of a maggot's brain. And it's got all those neurons and synapses. So it's just putting it in perspective to how much you've got in here, as is. And humans, of course, have an extraordinary 60 billion, I believe, about. I don't know whether anybody has managed to. I presume a human brain hasn't been completely mapped in that detail. I don't know. I don't think so, from what they're saying there. Right. So continuing with consciousness, memory, and regeneration, you're going to have to read the top bit again for me, because I have a bar across it.
Yes. So memory supports body awareness as we apprehend and or react to different situations. Ability neuron nets are embedded by experiences. They affect and are affected by our responses and behavior outcomes.
Okay. Sleep, on the other hand, services the brain by recalibrating emotional circuits and reboots the body's metabolic state by balancing insulin and glucose. It enriches the ability to learn, to memorize, and make logical decisions. Sleep modifies painful memories and processes past and present memories in its virtual reality theatre, a reorganizing and refiling system of dreams. I believe it. I also think it sorts out what you don't need and you get rid of it. Some things, I think. Modern lifestyles involve being constantly alert to the internet and interrupted by the smartphone. And apparently the blue light is quite disruptive to us as well. Lack of sleep creates a state of constant jet lag. This tends to contribute to a more stressful and potentially shorter life.
That's true, very true.
So I've had to pick out just interesting facts, really, because it's such a big chapter. Now we're moving on to aging successfully and keeping an active mind, which is definitely what I'm aiming at doing. And you're going to have to read the top bullet again for me, please.
Yes, brain plasticity operates throughout our lives, and the expression, if you don't use it, you lose it, fits in with this new understanding. So if you don't use it, you lose it equals neurons that go together, fire together, right?
Yes, and I think I carry on and say, yeah, a bit further on. We don't deteriorate on everything because, as we know, old people often remember things from their youth. So maybe things they practiced more. It's the repetition part that we often don't think about with older people. You have to continue. When you're younger, you're practicing lots of things and they stick in your mind better, but you still have, although I don't think anybody's measured the difference in ability, but you still have the potential for learning new things. But we tend not to expect older people to learn things. You know, if you present them with new situations, they will be stimulated and they will practice. So carrying on, our brains use a multiplicity of neural pathways affected by our conscious and unconscious experiences, incomprehensible and inaccessible to science. And so we really do need to do our own research. These are my points, of course, that I've got from the stuff I've been looking at, the data I found. Our nervous and neural systems have unexpected latent and resting potentials. Our brains are so dynamic, they can show miswiring errors in neuronal maps as they light up and even move around the brain. Apparently, this is from the work of 𝐮𝐻. And I got a lot of this information for this chapter from 𝐩𝐥, who wrote a wonderful book in 2007, which is worth looking up. But as I said, I think you've got my references anyway, and you can download them from the publisher's website. Neuroscientist Paul Barker-Rita's father, Pedro, had a catastrophic stroke at the age of 65, becoming paralyzed and helpless. I've only quoted him as an example of something that can happen to someone in old age, because I didn't mention him in the last talk, and he's particularly interesting. So I'm just telling you his story here, and you're going to have to read the top bullet again. Okay. I've got no cross on there, so I can't get rid of it. I'm sorry.
We would like to stop share and share again, maybe it will be fixed.
No, you're doing a good job here, and you're practicing your English, so yes, you don't mind.
Yes, Rita's brother George, a medical student, undertook his father's long-term care and psychotherapy and had the idea of teaching
physiotherapy.
Physiotherapy, and had the idea of teaching his father to learn like a young child.
He got him to crawl and do all kinds of infant games, following infant developmental stages. What a bright idea. He became a psychologist when he qualified as well afterwards. He rolled marbles, washed up, manipulated common objects, and learned to feed himself all over again. Pedro went on to recover all his faculties, and it was only on his death from a heart attack 7 years later, I believe he was climbing a mountain at the time, Barker-Rita discovered his father's brain had sustained extensive damage. He was asked to actually join in with the autopsy, which must have been really, he said it was a very strange experience. He discovered that 97% of the nerves to the cerebral cortex had been destroyed. He realized that it had never healed in the conventional sense, but his father's recovery had shown his brain's extraordinary ability to remember and reorganize itself somehow. So, right, I think we're nearly at the end. Right. So this is the conclusion.
Right.
Again, please, can you read the top bit?
Our brain plasticity has helped and hindered adjustment in learning as human knowledge has developed. For example, we found new solutions, but sometimes convinced ourselves mistaken ideas were correct.
Okay, I
it's
suggest.
kind of placebo effect.
Yeah, you mentioned that before. Yeah, sort of, you know, that we think we're right when we're not. So we do need to learn to check things out a lot more and listen to other people a great deal more. Yeah, research. I suggest that if we are to survive the physical, social, and environmental challenges of our age, which I deal with in the final chapter, actually, we need to check these ideas out, understand and manage our learning better, how we respond to things in the world. The next chapter explains how our intelligence is affected by feelings and emotions, with some of the current scientific evidence from experts. So I have concluded my presentation there. Sorry about the problem with the black bar at the top. So, right.
You want
Okay.
to stop sharing?
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Great.
My old brain is trying to cope with this.
Yes, you included so many stories in the book.
Yes.
The student who is excellent in writing, and there is also the story about Pedro and the other people. So, yes. Why you have chosen? I know that you didn't do this just randomly. You chose those people for a reason.
Yes. Yes.
What was your reason?
Well, I found that some of them illustrated particular things. You know, they illustrated particular points about brain plasticity, and very often they had achieved a great deal against the odds, which I found fascinating. I've always been very interested in stories about people, and it's qualitative evidence. So, and as well as that, I've looked at academic papers. I was so interested in the subject that I've thrown everything but the kitchen sink at it, basically, which is an English saying. You've included everything but the kitchen sink, because I tend to want to look at things from different angles. So I look at all different kinds of data, and I think I have brought it together in a different way. It is academically based because I have looked at experts' work and read their books, but I also have looked at teachers' work, because there are some fantastic blogs and articles out there by working teachers currently which evidence this, and I think it helps to make academic theory much more accessible if we can relate it to current events. But sometimes it's been old stories that seem fascinating to me. So basically it's a very idiosyncratic sort of journey I've been on. Somebody said don't use that word, but actually it's a unique journey I've been on. So what all I do is I invite other people to look at the resources that I've researched and think about how that relates to their own work. That's basically what I'm doing in this book. I brought it together. I've given my own ideas, and I'm open to finding out more. And I'm still researching, actually. So I'm finding out new things all the time.
So you are collaborating with more people in your book, quoting, and you are doing exactly like the neurons. They are sending and receiving electrochemical signals with other
Yes.
neurons in the brain.
Yes. The next book, though, I'm doing a lot more reading, and I'm having a look at stuff about AI and the ethics of AI, and my subject kind of goes across everything anyway, but so I keep finding out new things which are interesting. So, but it'll probably be a couple of years before I produce the next book.
Yes, before we write something, we have certain needs and certain aspirations and certain objectives to fulfill. Do you think you have fulfilled your aspirations through this book, or maybe there is you are eager for more?
I've discovered another fresh area to go into, but I'm not going to reveal much more about that at the moment. I'm looking at how feelings and emotions affect group psychology. I'm particularly interested in that. So, but that's for the future. I haven't finished reading up on that yet.
Yes, emotions
But
and
at
feelings.
the moment, I'm happy with what I've produced, and it's very interesting to hear people's comments and see what they feel about, you know, I'm interested in their work. If I can facilitate that collaborative research with practitioners and therapists, then I'll be very pleased. And I hope that I've put a lot of references in which are not directly referenced, but which are current and give backup data in different subject areas. So you were asking me about language, and I've sourced quite a bit of stuff on language, which comes in later chapters.
So we'll have to wait.
I'll send you the next chapter as is, and you see what you think about that one.
About
But
language.
the first and the second are sort of psychological theory, and then the next 4 chapters are more to do with education. I compare 2 education systems, the UK one and the Finnish one. And I've done quite a lot of research into special needs and ordinary teaching. And then the final 2 chapters are looking wider at wider subjects. Chapter 7 is about knowledge, our attitude to knowledge, because our emotions come in there. And the final one is about the current problems that we're facing in the world, which I've read a lot about Silicon Valley and you know, the different problems that we face, the environment, yes, democracy. I've touched on that, but yeah, so there's a lot in it. So I think it's probably quite a lot. It's probably quite a good idea to do a talk on each chapter, which you suggested.
Yes, of course. I will be happy to do more talks about this. So, yes.
Hopefully I'll get better at presenting with a slideshow. I had a look at Nick Peach's instructions, and I've learned a lot from him. He was very good on how to present on the internet. So I'm on a learning curve.
Yes, so when we learn something new, something happens in the brain. The structures of the brain are changing.
Yes. So I think we probably, yeah, sorry, go on.
So I am a teacher with a lot of curiosity who likes to challenge obvious assumptions and uncover what may lie beneath.
Yes.
What other assumptions or what other ideas you would like to discover apart from this?
I would like to work out how we can organize ourselves better so that we can maintain our freedom and be better at listening to each other and collaborating together and create systems where we can exist sustainably in the world. It's a big ambition, isn't it? But if I could help to inform that, I would be very pleased, because I worry about my grandchildren and the future for our world. So yes, I'm heading off in that direction eventually. I'm reading up bits at the moment towards writing something about that, but it's really because I'm interested in it, the subject myself, not because I think I'm an expert, but because I just find it very interesting and I'm learning more things. So, and I think we probably reached the end, have we?
Yes, we reached the end, and we have a couple of comments before we close the session. I just want to say that yes, that we will plan another talk about a different chapter.
Yes,
and it will probably be about language, learning languages at the.
I don't know. I think I'm working my way through the book. So the next one is about emotion. I'm sorry, you're going to have to put up with a bit more theory. But I have got plenty on language later on.
Yes.
And yeah, it's all relevant to language actually. So all the way through, there's relevance for language, I think. And I was just thinking how to say goodbye, because my cousin in New Zealand spotted my talk. And I was going to say happy winter holiday, which is what we're having up here. But of course, in the southern earth, they're having a summer holiday.
So we will meet later. So to talk to you later. And
yes, probably the end of January, I'm thinking, possibly. So
yes, the end of January will be good.
Perhaps at the end of each month, right?
Yes. Okay.
And
thank you.
I've been looking at your other talks, and I think they're great, and really enjoy talking to you, 𝐬𝐧𝐻. So thank you very much, and thank you to anybody who might be watching.
Yes, thank you. So talk to you later. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.